Welcome to
Bean Stuff.
Today we are talking about how to taste coffee, and we just tasted some beautiful Honduras. I feel like we've had this coffee on this podcast. Almost every episode has been the Honduras.
I think it's because we tend to do this in the evenings, and one of us wants to go to sleep at night.
Yes.
Funny what you say about tasting, though,
Yeah.
because subtly, it's more about something else rather than tasting.
What is it more about?
It's actually smelling. I would say, you're probably between 70, 90, 80%, let me say, therefore, is what you're tasting, is what you're smelling, and we don't even know it.
Whoa.
We'll get on to
Dropping knowledge right off the bat.
Yeah.
Well, I guess in this episode, the thing we wanted to help address, or we wanted to talk about, was how. I guess the question came up: how do you know if what you're tasting is good coffee? Because my thought is, how do you know if you like coffee or not? Because if you don't know if what you're tasting is good coffee, how can you then say you like it or not? You know what I mean?
It's a good point, because I've had a number of people come to the roastery saying they don't even like coffee. And they do a cupping. For some reason, they get to a cupping, which is like tasting coffee. It's the more professional term we use. But they will have their sip, well, they'll smell it first. They go, oh, that smells really nice. I think, I'm thinking, they have a taste for it. That tastes good too, but it doesn't taste anything like the coffee I've been having.
Right.
And we just need to go back to some podcasts talking about freshness.
right.
You would have it. And I think a lot of people have tasted coffee and don't like it. And guess what? I wouldn't like it either. If I tasted the coffee that I had when they were young, I wouldn't like coffee either.
And that's the whole point. I mean, I think so many times coffee is made incorrectly or wrong, or in a way that it does taste really bad. And I want people to know if what they're tasting is bad or not. So that you can say, okay, this isn't good coffee.
Yeah.
So we've kind of touched on it, but you say step one is smell or breathing.
Yes. It really is, and there's lots of technical terms for it, but really you're using the whole olfactory, which we do it all the time, but in our culture, we're very much more on the taste buds and the flavor rather than getting our brain involved in the fragrance. And fragrance, when I say that, I'm using it technically in terms of the dry, and you smell it. You don't taste it, but you smell it. And you can get better and better and better just by smelling stuff.
Right. Well, I even think of like when I was a kid not liking food, and you hold your nose to eat something you don't, or whatever it be, but you taste it less.
That's a thing we use in tasting, that to prove that point is that if you block your nose, you won't taste anything.
Well, and it is kind of like having a cold. You taste less when you have a cold.
Yep.
And so that makes sense. That makes sense that you're not going to have as good of flavors, those kind of things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, number one is smelling it. And I know that, like, even cupping coffees, you oftentimes will smell the dry grounds first before even tasting it.
Yeah. You grind your grounds, your coffee beans, as you
grind
say.
your grounds.
Double grind. But you grind it, and of course you want to have it within 15 minutes to half an hour. If you're going to have it more than 15 minutes, put a cover on it.
After you grind it.
After you grind it, yes. Then you half an hour, sort of the maximum, because you want, when you grind it, like we were saying in that episode, was it's just disappearing. All that smell is just going very quickly. You're grinding.
Right. It's like opening up it's like putting an air freshener in your car. Yes. Once it's opened up, the aroma starts. It just starts going away from the actual air freshener.
And I tell people that rather than taste, even if you can just grind it and smell it, you've got, as I said, 80% chance you've got fresh coffee. You've got coffee you like to smell. Therefore, you're probably going to like the taste of it. In fact, I tell people, go into a restaurant, and I don't do this myself. My wife calls it a restaurant coffee, and she tells me before we go into the restaurant, Paul, she says, I'm going to have a restaurant coffee, and I have a few splutters and nervous.
Meaning she's going to have coffee that's probably pretty bad.
Yeah. And she just warns me, which is very, very kind of her.
You don't go to shock.
Mind you, I must say, that's been happening for about 10 years now. And I did say last month, she told me, Paul, I don't think I'm going to have a restaurant coffee.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes it takes that long to realise, actually, why am I putting this bad stuff in my mouth?
Well, Well, and I think a lot of times, sometimes the taste of something can be associated with a nostalgia or a memory, and so sometimes bad coffee could be what you enjoy.
Exactly.
This breathing in the fragrance of the aroma leads me to a question that might jump ahead of everything we have in our notes, but I'm going to throw it out there. Is, does coffee, and I guess this might not be a yes or no question, but when you smell coffee and you say, oh, this smells like chocolatey, nutty, or, does the taste often reflect that? Or could the taste of it be different or very different to the smell? Or are they usually pretty kind of paired somewhat?
You're going to get the smell and the taste are going to be similar, I would say. And when I say that as you get used to doing this and actually labeling and thinking about it, that's probably the first thing, is just think about it.
Right.
And realize, one, do I like it or not? That's the first thing you've thought, rather than just glug it down and I don't even think. But you think about it, and then you're going to suddenly realize, I would think, and there's a whole, I think these things called coffee wheels, flavor wheels. There's one just come out by the SCA, and it's a very accurate one, very good. And you can get lexicons, you can get little kits, you can get little capsules that you taste, so that you can get good at learning how to think about coffee. And that's down the line.
And the flavor wheel, is that like a visual thing?
It is a visual thing, yes.
We'll put a link to one in the description of the podcast, because it is a helpful, I think if I'm thinking of it correctly, it's almost like a complementary color wheel, or the color wheel, I guess. And you can kind of say, it gives you a good definition of different flavors. That's the hardest part for me.
Yes.
Like, I'll taste something, and I know I can taste it, obviously, but finding the words to define your taste, even if it's like simple stuff.
And that's really,
so
as I think about, you're thinking to put labels on something, because you want to actually go another stage, and what you're calling, let's say, what you're calling licorice, for instance, if that's a flavor in coffee. But I have a friend in Ethiopia. He doesn't know what licorice is.
Oh, that's true. Culturally,
it's different.
Right.
New Zealand to America, it's going to be different.
Exactly. So we've got
tastes like a Griffin's ginger nut.
Oh my! Griffin's ginger nut.
But guess what? They don't have them here.
And someone might just think we're talking gibberish.
Right. Hokey pokey. Oh man.
Jelly tip.
Okay. Let's back to it.
Well, yeah, I'm getting hungry. So we've got the smell. What's the next step in the process? So, I mean, obviously, I think in this case, the idea is, you get a brewed cup of coffee. You're not going to get the grounds. So you order a cup of coffee at the store or the
restaurant or cafe.
Yeah, wherever you're going to get that.
Funny,
cafe.
I didn't finish my story. Yeah. I tell people who come to our cupping and say, just do this for me. When you're next time you're at a cafe or a restaurant, ask for a coffee, ask who could have it ground. Just bring the dry grounds first.
Well, yeah.
And that would be blown out of the water.
And you could almost say, hey, what coffees do you have? Can I smell them?
Oh, well, unfortunately, they probably only have one. But anyway, this is
right. Yeah, that's true. But if you like the smell, you might like the taste. So, you're going to be smelling most likely brewed coffee. Yes. And if you're doing this at home, this can be something interesting to try with the ground coffee. You could try whole bean, then ground, and then
actually, if you're into coffee, and if you're probably listening to this, you're probably more into coffee than you realize. And
you're ahead of the game.
You're ahead of the game already. And I would suggest get you probably have 2 different coffees in your cupboard right now, and just grind them up just a little bit, not much. And someone is over for lunch, for tea that night, for dinner, you can get them. Let's just smell the coffee, and just get used to 2 of them, and it's quite suddenly it's like, wow, I've never thought of doing that before.
Well, and actually, something else I'll link in the description of the podcast. There's a thing. Let me look at the notes here so I get the right name. Otherwise, someone will call me on it. It's a coffee tasting notebook. I think it's called 33 Coffees.
Yes.
And it's this little tiny, you can fit it in your pocket notebook kind of thing. And it has a little wheel that says, does it have these flavors, these ones? And you can rate your coffee. So if you're really into it, you could even take that. You can get a text in the middle of the podcast.
Oh, yeah. People were texting me already about this.
Mate.
Probably see something wrong. You can get apps too, Reed.
But, that's true. Apps.
Whole apps that can... just give you a historical what you had this week, what you had last week, because this just opens up so many things actually. Because
it's gonna be the longest podcast description ever.
as a roaster, roasting coffee and cupping go hand in hand. You do them both, and I have always done them both. And you just get so much experience, and it's hard to sort of hold back and say, "Oh, this is simplify." It's very hard to do because what I was going to say is that. If you actually write down like the book you were talking about, you can write down I had a Sumatra Mandela on this date. A year later, I have another one, and then you can go back. Wow, this Mandela, according to these notes, is way better or worse.
And I think having something that makes you, or not, I guess, kind of forces you to analyze what you're tasting. I think that is a really helpful way to engage a little bit more because you're kind of forcing yourself to think about
Once again, you're using your brain not only to think about and the memories and bring back the memories and then add a new memory in there. You're getting you're engaging yourself in this rather than just glugging it down.
Well, and I think that would probably be my maybe we can make that step number 2.
Okay.
We can add it in, but it's just slow down.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that a lot of stuff is missed when we speed through that process. It's like scarfing down your food, you don't enjoy the full flavor profile.
I think if it would do my exercises, I could do it all in 2 minutes. Or I could do it in 20 minutes, and guess which is going to be better for me.
So we've got a note here that says take a quick sip. What do you mean by that?
Well, that's part of, I said smelling your coffee. When you sip your coffee, it does suddenly engage your taste buds on your tongue, and we could look at microvilli and, there's electron microscopes of what's going on there. But the interesting thing is when you taste coffee, that's called retronasal. I think it's the correct word for it. So you've smelled coffee through your nose.
Right.
Now retronasally, as the liquid goes down, the gases that you just taste are also still there, and they're going up again to the same spot onto the brain again. And
up into kind of the nose.
Yeah. And to the olfactory part of the brain. Which, by the way, so I get really excited by this because it goes to the olfactory, which is identifying smells and things.
Right.
Guess what? It's almost merged. It's very close, I believe, to the memory center as well.
Interesting.
And what you said before about the emotions and the smell, they are very closely related. So that makes sense.
You could almost add that as a category in your little notebook. Where were you? What were you doing?
Yeah. Grandpa's leather seats in his car,
exactly.
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think to add on to the quick sip, and we did do it at the very beginning of the episode. Right. But we did a slurp. And this is it's kind of like from what I know, the louder, the messier, the better.
It really is. And if you don't get anything else from this, smelling is brilliant. And then secondly, slurping it. And I always say, it's like, you have taking a bowl of soup and you dip the spoon and it looks very polite, very lovely. And you take the spoon up and it's nice and full now, the spoon.
Right.
And you can get cupping spoons if you want to get detailed.
Right.
But then the louder, the more you suck in, the more gas you're going to get exploding up there again, into the brain.
I think of it like if you have a hose for your garden with a little gun on the end of it, and you can change the nozzle.
Yes.
You can either have the direct stream, which is just a powerful stream, or if you have a mist setting, if you go it's spreading that water way further, and it's spreading the I'll do this in the most non-technical terms. The taste molecules.
Whoa,
but it's spreading that evenly across your palate, so all your taste buds are getting this taste, and as well, it's aerating it, so it's actually you're getting a more full experience.
Going up to the olfactory again, and suddenly you get a double whammy of smell.
Double whammy of coffee vapor,
mate. And you'll go, I don't need any more coffee. I had a coffee. This was so good.
One sip.
But
that's I think a huge part. I feel bad. I feel like we're gonna. If you get one thing from this podcast, you'll become a very impolite coffee drinker.
Yes, but you'll just so enjoy your coffee so much more.
But the next time you see someone with a sword going, you go, I know what they're doing.
Yeah, good, exactly. By the way, I probably should say, because some people I notice, some people are too polite or too shy. I don't know what it is, but they just do this little insipid little, and that won't do anything. It won't even put the coffee over your taste buds very much.
Yeah.
But I call it a backwards whistle. So when you pucker your lips and you whistle out, but if you then go in, you can do a whistle inward. Again, you suck it in, and that's how small you want your lips to be to give that pressure. You talk about the hose to make it just come in. And one place I know particularly, Brazil, they are wonderful. It sounds like a 747 jet engine. Yeah, it's got this whistle, and it's just an amazing thing to behold.
I do remember being in the room with someone from Brazil, and they were sipping coffee, and I was not ready for the amount of volume that came from their sip. But it was, again, it is spreading it, and it does have that purpose of spreading it across the palate so that you're getting a full flavor. It's like eating. It's like if you just put chocolate in your mouth and instead of chewing it, you just swallow it. You're not going to get a whole lot of flavor. If you let it sit on your tongue and melt and move it around, you're going to really understand that flavor a lot more.
And you're suddenly using all these tools that are in your mouth. You're using your hypothalamus, as I said. You're using the gases. You're using liquid, all different forms of it. You're using taste buds that have that's a whole taste. So you look at your tongue and what it's doing, and you get acidity. You can get body, all because you've just left the coffee in there and you're thinking about it.
And to move on from that, the next thing. I guess the thing I want to help people understand is there's a lot of terms when tasting coffee. There's a couple main ones though, as far as like acidity, body, aftertaste.
Yeah, they're the easy ones. The flavor is the most common one. We just go there straight away.
So can we break down those four? So in that order: flavor, aftertaste, acidity, body. Yeah. Because that shows up on a lot of things of like, what is the body? What is that?
Yes.
And I think, maybe we have some concept of that, but I think if we can help define that a little bit better, that would give us, at least we'll all be on the same page.
I think we go to flavor quickly because it's something we have ice creams, we have different flavors of ice cream, and we're sort of used to it.
It's kind of a well-known concept.
A little more known. Yeah. And the reason it's more known if you've practiced it more. But the others, aftertaste, acidity, and body, you could practice those too, and you'd get just as good.
Right.
I do need to say something here. I believe from what I've studied and what I've been told is that in this whole tasting things, females are way better off than us males.
Really?
Yeah. Just genetically, they have more
taste buds?
Yeah, and I think they're more attuned to these sort of things. Perhaps they think more carefully about these things. I'm not sure. But you get there's non-tasters, there's tasters, and then there's super tasters. And the super tasters, more women involved in that.
Interesting.
Tasters, there's about 25%. Non-tasters is 25%
of the
population. The middle section of the tasters, there's about 50%. Then there's another 25% that are super tasters.
So
just mention that.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And so even like myself, or like mom, she may get a different flavor just simply because she's maybe her taste buds, or she has more of them to pull out some more flavor. So we've talked about flavor. Give us the brief rundown of what flavor.
Flavor you can get as detailed as you want, and you can go to always break it down. It's probably not the best ones to do, but break it like 4 different areas
of flavor.
Of flavors we're talking about. One would be nutty, I guess we call it. Then you'd look at fruity. You'd look at, I'd say, herbal.
Herbal,
that's right.
Herbal.
And I can't remember the fourth one straight off the top of my head.
Earthy?
Spicy.
Spicy.
Yes.
And so, I guess flavor, is that basically putting a name to what you initially taste?
Yes, putting a name to what you smell.
Or the overall.
And you taste. And those are general areas, a little simplification.
Right.
And you'll learn, but if you take those 4 to start with, you can probably put what you're tasting into one of those.
Gotcha. So for flavor, you're kind of putting the coffee as a whole, for like the smell, the taste of it as you drink it, into a description.
Yes.
And then what's aftertaste?
Aftertaste, yes. I mean, we should do a whole podcast on this flavor, because the flavor wheel, the new coffee one that came out only 2 years ago, has a whole lot of definitions. It tells you to go to the grocery store, tells you what to buy if you want to know if it's a blueberry or a strawberry.
Right, because it helps you define what does a blueberry taste like.
Yeah, and my friend in Ethiopia, strawberry. I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, learning other things taste like, so you can describe what the coffee tastes like.
Exactly, that's true. It's true, and it's all learning. And it's as you do more of this, suddenly you realize, wow, I didn't know how much little I knew, but how much you're growing and what you're
right.
Well, so aftertaste, that's a different one that we do naturally, but we don't think about it too much. But you swallow the coffee. You've got the liquid. You swallow the coffee, and do you have any residual flavors? Is it harsh? Is it good? Is it smooth? Is it just is there the aftertaste has gone down and you still notice it? Is it long lasting or is it short? And you can think about that in different coffees. Not that that's one good or bad, but different coffees relate differently there.
Right. Do you still taste something afterwards?
If you've roasted it a little darker, you're probably going to taste a little harshness in the aftertaste. You go light, you'll probably taste a little, you may be a bit too fruity, maybe a little sour perhaps. And that's in the aftertaste.
And the aftertaste is kind of what's left once you've drunken it.
That's right. So
once
you've had the flavour, you've written down some notes, some words that came to your mind, and aftertaste, you've swallowed it, and you're just thinking, okay, is there an aftertaste or is there not an aftertaste? Then you can go on and describe the aftertaste.
Okay, so that gives us a good kind of breakdown of that. So acidity.
That's a harder one. And we're not talking about acidity in the stomach.
Well, in acidity, I think of... I don't know if you can tell me if I'm wrong or right here, but is acidity basically like vinegar versus milk?
Yeah,
or vinegar versus water, maybe?
The difficult there is vinegar has a sour note to it, and acidity is not necessarily sourness.
Gotcha.
Acidity, if you're going to put some words to it, it's going to be...
flavor words to
acidity.
Yeah,
well, not flavor words, but it's going to be the liveliness of the coffee. It's going to be the sparkle of the coffee. The one I like best, I use the most, is the wow of the coffee. You take it, and usually you do taste it pretty early on, because you can typically taste it more at the front, but not necessarily. It can be other parts of the tongue as well, which is another podcast. All the parts of the tongue. It's amazing what the tongue... how it can differentiate and taste stuff.
It's almost like, I don't know if this is... another way I think about it is like, how quickly does it latch onto your palate? Or like, how aggressively does it latch on? No, acidity. Like, how aggressively does it latch onto your palate as you taste it?
Pretty quickly.
No, and I mean like that scale from kind of like a mild to...
right, yes.
If you taste it and it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Aggressively latches onto you.
Yeah.
That's typically going to have a higher acidity.
Exactly. And then you can go into other countries, like Kenya is known for high acidity. Colombia may not be so much, but that's not always true because they're doing different methods, different varietals.
And the acidity doesn't necessarily limit you to a specific flavor profile.
No.
So you can have something that's got really nutty flavors, but acidity. You can also have very fruity and acidity.
Yes, right. So what you're doing here, you're saying to tease out stuff, and it's not just my preference. I like this flavor.
Right.
But now, actually, I like acidity too. Oh, that changes it. Oh, I like this aftertaste as well. Suddenly you've got other tools that are helping you say, actually, I wouldn't have thought I liked this coffee, but I do.
Right. And I mean, I think of it when people try beers and they like hoppiness.
Oh, right.
Hoppiness is... I'm not going to say it's the same as acidity, but it's that bite. It's
I suppose, yeah.
And so it's like when you have a beer and they have all the descriptions of, this tastes like this, or it tastes like this, or it's got more hoppiness to it, or it's, like the different types of beer. It's almost like that with coffee. It's like if you find you like a lot of acidity, let's say, it may not be that you like a specific region of coffee.
Right.
But a specific flavor profile from coffee, which you can find in all sorts of coffees.
A common misconception I probably should point out here, we're talking about perceived acidity from the tongue. True. Compared to acidity that often people get confused with it. Some have told me, if you roast it differently, it's going to have less acidity. Coffee is pretty neutral, almost close to water, actually, in the stomach. So... roasting is not going to change the acidity.
It's a flavor thing. It's not a...
Yes. It's what you perceive from the tongue into your brain, and it's this is lively. It's not actually a pH level.
So it's not a scientifically... Yeah. It's more flavor than it is anything else. Yes. Gotcha. And then the last piece of our quartet of flavor, coffee tasting is body. And let me try this one because I feel like the best way to describe body is whole milk versus water. And how heavy is it on your tongue?
Yes.
And this is the one where you also, it's a little less appropriate publicly maybe, but so you slurp your coffee,
Yeah.
and then you get it in your mouth and
That's right.
that's me trying to wash my mouth.
Yeah.
I realize I'm on a podcast.
That's right. They're not going to see that. I saw that. It was pretty good, actually.
But you swirl it around your mouth, or just let it sit there. And how much how much mass does it have? What's the weight of it?
It's like having it like your tongue is now a scale.
Yeah, right. I like that.
Yeah, they call it the technical word for it, viscosity. How thick is it in your mouth?
Yeah.
There's another part to body though, and that's the main part I think is how thick. And some coffees are really thick,
like honey in water.
Yes,
in a sense you can see honey moving.
Heavy. Yeah,
yeah.
Yes, honey's a good example. Another part of the body is it smooth or not? Does it just like velvety, which is sort of honey too, and it's smooth. It's not harsh or just move around really.
And I think that acidity and body almost have an interesting relationship as opposed to how they make your tongue interpret the coffee too.
Yes.
Because it is a little bit like if something's very acidic, it may, to me, sometimes it feels like it has less body because it feels harsher on the tongue. Or if it's got less acidity and more body, it feels way heavier, kind of. But yeah.
And of the four we've talked about tonight, is the acidity is the hardest one to get your head around, and it takes a little time to realize one coffee is acidic and one is not. It's a little more subtle in some ways. Sure, you can get some citric acid, you can get some lemons, you can try different things to get acidity, the feel for it. Probably the best way is to get a 9-volt battery. You know those square rectangular batteries?
Yes.
I don't really suggest doing this.
It's not going to kill it. Well,
mate, I don't know.
We will not recommend it.
No,
but
no, don't do it.
If you decide to try it.
Yeah, no, they're not going to try this.
No. Don't try this at home.
This would be this experiment that you're not going to do, is taking that battery, that's a fresh battery, and you put it on the tip of your tongue and you get this, wow!
Shock, yeah.
Little shock. And that's sort of what acidity is, not complete picture.
And if you've never licked a 9-volt battery, you don't just lick the battery, you do lick the two terminals on the
together.
top.
Oh,
if you just lick the battery, that's something else.
Not that you're going to do that, but anyway.
No, not that you would ever. But, yeah, and I think that's actually a really good way to think of like acidity and all that, because it is a very much a wow.
And that's like the sparkle in a wine, the liveliness in something you taste. It's acidity, I guess you could call that.
And here's a question. I know we're getting close to our time, but
yes.
Does the way you make the coffee, if you made it well,
yes.
So obviously not letting it brew for crazy long or anything, but if you made it appropriately and perfectly in different types, like pour over versus Chemex versus espresso, is that coffee, the same coffee in all of them, going to express a different flavor profile? Somewhat?
Yes, it will slightly. I always say that the coffee, the green bean that you pick off a tree, it's all there. And you can't change that. You can tweak it though. You can use a different method and bring out a little more of that acidity it has. You can bring a little more by a different method. You can do that by roasting lighter, darker, longer first crack, and that can tweak it. It won't change the genetic of this coffee is a berry coffee that has a lot of blueberry. You will notice that, and you won't be able to change that too much.
So it's a little bit like listening to music through your car versus headphones versus your stereo.
Yeah.
It's the same music, but you're gonna pull out a few different things here and there, but the overall generic profile of it's going to be very similar.
The only method that may change it somewhat more than just tweaking would be an espresso. That's it's because it's only doing 20 seconds or whatever, and it's just pulling through a certain amount in 35 seconds or whatever, or 35 grams. That can tweak it a little further than a typical Chemex or cone or whatever you use.
Right. And I think you said it well, I think just before we started the podcast, and I guess I will say this as well, experiment with it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're like, I like this coffee, but I don't like it as a pour over, try it as something else. And ultimately, like, if you find what you like, even if it's not to the rules or to the book, do that. Yeah. I mean, the point is not to make the perfect coffee.
Yeah.
The point is to enjoy coffee.
That's true. We had a Kenya that we just got. There's just 2 bags of it actually, or 2 bags and a half, and we've got that. And we were trying. The first thing you do is you roast it up and sort out where is its sweet point, and can we tweak it to make it a better sweet point than if we do 2.5 minutes compared to 2 minutes 15 seconds after the first crack, whatever.
Right.
But the method, we then put it as I think we did it as a Hario V60, and then we did it as a French press, and then we did it as a cone yesterday. And you think, oh, will they be the same? No, they were quite different. And most of the stuff we actually liked, this particular one, liked it as a French press.
Interesting.
And it changed the body, the balance, which is another thing you look at in cupping. We're not going there today.
Yeah.
But the whole balance of that acidity, that body, that flavor, does it balance out, or is it all lopsided? It's all just screaming a high note of acidity, but it's got no body, it's got no aftertaste to talk of.
Does it have an even temper?
Yeah, that's right.
You can have different temperaments, you know, it might be more this or more that, but is it an even temperament overall? Yeah. Well, and I think that kind of sums up coffee tasting basics. Basics 101.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, we look at, when we're cupping, and that's another thing, we look at 10 different areas, and we've looked at 4 of them.
I think these
but 4, I'm going to say the last one is our own personal preference. That's the only subjective one in this whole thing, actually. And it's, do I like it or not?
And that's the most important one.
No.
No?
Not necessarily. It is, if
you're
it
drinking it, if it's for your own personal drinking, you don't like it, that's not going to be good.
Ah, true. Good point.
For you, it's probably different because you're grading it for not yourself, but for people.
Sorry, I like to be very objective rather than subjective.
Right.
But that's true. And here we are having Honduras for the 4th time now.
Oh man, I think this is our 9th podcast. I would have probably had it on 7. But again, thank you so much for listening this week. If there's anything that you would like to know, or you feel we didn't cover adequately enough, we're always coming up with, I feel like every time we make a podcast, we realize, oh man, we could do a podcast on this and this and this, but we don't think of everything. So if there is something you want, let us know, and we'd be more than happy to take a look at that and see about doing a podcast. As always, like, subscribe. I don't know if you can like a podcast. I don't know. Anyway, like and subscribe. Comment, give us a rating. It always helps us to know what we can do better, or what you're liking. We can do more of that. And yeah, check us out on all the YouTubes and Facebooks and Instagrams and all that kind of stuff. But thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.